This is Senator Kamala Harris. During the first Democratic presidential debate, she was declared the winner, all because of a moment that went viral between herself and former Vice President Joe Biden. So buckle up, everyone, because to fully understand this, we're gonna have to do a deep dive. The confrontation was set in motion when Marianne Williamson was speaking about race in the United States.
I do not believe that the average American is a racist, but the average American is woefully undereducated about the history of race in the United States.
Ms. Williamson, thank you very much.
Vice President Biden, we're going to get to you. Hang on, we're going to get to you.
Stage, I would like to speak on the issue of race.
Sure, there's also an Asian guy on the stage who has dealt with issues of race, but what do I know?
So, on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. And I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden. I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground.
Harris is referring to his speech at a fundraiser for Joe Biden, where he spoke of his experience as a senator. Even in the days when I got there, the Democratic Party still had 7 or 8 old-fashioned Democratic segregationists. You'd get up and you'd argue like the devil with them. Then you'd go down and have lunch or dinner together. The political system worked. We were divided on issues, but the political system worked. So what Biden is saying is that to get anything done, he had to work with people who he strongly disagreed with on a moral level. You know, as opposed to going on Twitter and Facebook and calling them out as racists. Today, you look at the other side and you're the enemy. Not the opposition, the enemy. We don't talk to each other anymore. I know the New Left tells me that this is old-fashioned. And as a member of the New Left, Harris saw an opportunity to raise her profile by calling out the Democratic frontrunner.
But I also believe, and it's personal, and it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of 2 United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing.
Senator Harris is referring to the policy of busing, which is assigning children to a school outside of their own neighborhood on the basis of their race in order to bring about racial desegregation. While well-intentioned, it ultimately is seen as a policy that didn't work.
And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the 2nd class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
So Harris gets personal, referring to when she was bused as part of a local policy from her neighborhood of middle-class Berkeley Flats to the more affluent Berkeley Hills. However, Joe Biden wasn't against busing on a local level, and Harris was able to participate in a busing program, so I legitimately don't understand her argument.
So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
Senator Harris, thank you.
So she began by talking about a busing policy from nearly 50 years ago, and then immediately goes into body cam policy? Anyway, Biden attempted to defend himself against Harris.
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well, there was a failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the 2nd class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local decision.
So that's where the federal government must step in.
According to an article in the New York Times, that decision was made in 1967. Harris participated in that program starting in 1970. And Joe Biden wasn't sworn in as a US Senator until 1973, so all of this predates his tenure in Congress. And that means that Harris's attack on Biden is disingenuous and dirty.
And that's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
Harris mentioned the VRA, the CRA, and the ERA, all things that Biden has supported in the past.
I supported the ERA from the very beginning. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up.
Pretty much, Joe. Pretty much. Now, even though Joe Biden has a fairly solid record when it comes to civil rights, he just wasn't able to properly defend himself against Harris's attack. And if you think that Harris's "that little girl was me" line wasn't a scripted moment, you'd be mistaken, as this tweet was posted within 2 minutes after she said it. Not to mention that "that little girl was me" shirts were for sale within hours.
The point that I was making is, had those senators, those segregationists, had their way, I would not be a member of the United States Senate today.
I will quickly point out that those segregationist senators were Democrats.
I would certainly not be a top contender to be president of the United States.
Cut to the second Democratic debate. Biden and Harris were set to share the stage, and CNN was pumping up the drama.
Tonight, a critical rematch. Former Vice President Joe Biden aiming to reclaim his momentum.
I don't believe there's anyone in this race more prepared than me.
Senator Kamala Harris not backing down after clashing with Biden over race.
There is still a point of disagreement between he and I. That remains.
Biden, flanked by Harris and Senator Cory Booker.
Black versus white. It's gonna be a race war. CNN.
We have got to have far more bold action on criminal justice reform, like having true marijuana justice.
What?
Which means that we legalize it on a federal level
and
reinvest the profits in communities that have been disproportionately targeted by marijuana enforcement.
Sorry to derail this, but marijuana justice? What does that even mean? And the federal government can't reinvest the profit from sales of something that it doesn't sell, unless he thinks that the United States should be in the business of the production and distribution of weed. Long story short, Cory Booker didn't own anybody. And besides, this isn't about him, it's about Kamala Harris.
Vice President Biden says that your current position on busing, you're opposed to federally mandated busing, that position is the same as his position. Is he right?
That is simply false. And let's be very clear about this. When Vice President Biden was in the United States Senate working with segregationists to oppose busing, which was the vehicle by which we would integrate America's public schools, had I been in the United States Senate at that time, I would have been completely on the other side of the aisle.
Here she says that busing was the vehicle to integrate schools, but that contradicts what she said the day after the first debate.
So let me just be really clear. Busing is a tool among many that should be considered. So I think of busing as being in the toolbox of what is available and what can be used.
So which is it? It's either one of many solutions or the only solution.
And let's be clear about this. Had those segregationists their way, I would not be a member of the United States Senate, Cory Booker would not be a member of the United States Senate, and Barack Obama would not have been in a position to nominate him to the title he now holds.
Cory Booker and Barack Obama didn't participate in busing, so it's a moot point. And in any case, I think those segregationists would have been a lot more concerned about a black man becoming president, don't you think? In any case, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. was ready to strike back. Sort of.
When Senator Harris was the Attorney General for 8 years in the state of California, there were two of the most segregated school districts in the country, in Los Angeles and in San Francisco. And she did not, I didn't see a single solitary time she brought a case against them to desegregate them.
That's a good point. Tell me more, Joe.
Secondly, she also was in a situation where she had a police department when she was there that in fact was abusing people's rights. And the fact was that she, in fact, was told by her own people, that her own staff, that she should do something about and disclose to defense attorneys like me that you, in fact, have been, the police officer did something that did not give you information would exculpate your client.
Joe, you lost me.
She didn't do that. She never did it. And so what happened? Along came a federal judge and said, enough, enough, and he freed 1,000 of these people. If you doubt me, Google 1,000 prisoners freed, Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Vice President Biden.
Why should I have to Google it, Joe? Use your words. Okay, so what Joe was trying to convey was that while Kamala Harris was the district attorney of San Francisco, a crime lab technician named Deborah Madden was, among other things, taking home cocaine evidence from the crime lab, possibly tainting that evidence and raising concerns about hundreds of cases.
We have a situation in San Francisco where every drug case as well as conviction is in question.
And even though she was required to, Harris failed to inform defense attorneys about the issue. Eventually, the word got out, and Harris was forced to drop about 1,000 cases. Unfortunately for Biden, he was not able to get that across clearly, but all was not lost, because on this night, a hero would rise.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana.
Ooh, Gabbard was referring to when Harris was on The Breakfast Club talking about how she had smoked in the past.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like in
and
college,
I inhaled. I did inhale.
Okay.
How long ago, you ask?
What were you listening to when you was high? What was on? What song was?
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, definitely Snoop. Tupac for sure.
Since Snoop Dogg and Tupac didn't break through until the mid-90s, that likely means that Harris was smoking weed while serving as a deputy district attorney in Alameda County. With that said, Gabbard's claim that Harris put away 1,500 people for marijuana violations is misleading. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, while Harris was attorney general, 1,974 people in California were convicted for hashish and marijuana-related offenses between 2011 and 2016. But to be fair, we don't know how many of those, if any, were directly prosecuted by Harris's office. On the other hand, while Harris was the San Francisco district attorney, she directly prosecuted cases. So if she successfully got even one marijuana case conviction, laughing about smoking weed makes Harris look like a huge hypocrite.
She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so.
Gabbard is referring to the case of Kevin Cooper, who in 1983 was convicted for the murder of 4 people and is on death row. It is widely believed that Cooper was framed for the crime, so much so that at the end of his term as governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger urged a thorough and careful review of the case, which incoming Attorney General Kamala Harris did not do. So much for being a progressive prosecutor. An article in the New York Times about Cooper says that as State Attorney General, Kamala Harris refused to allow advanced DNA testing and showed no interest in the case.
She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California.
Gabbard is referring to this article by the Daily Beast, showing that the Attorney General's office tried to limit the amount of inmates that received 2-for-1 credits, which means that for every 2 days served, inmates would receive credit for 3 days. These credits were granted only to those who voluntarily participated in special programs like helping to fight California wildfires. But criminal justice advocates sued the state and wanted the 2-for-1 credit extended to everyone. The AG's office argued that extending 2-for-1 credits to all minimum custody inmates at this time would severely impact fire camp participation, a dangerous outcome while California is in the middle of a difficult fire season and severe drought.
She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California, and she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
In 2004, when she was the San Francisco district attorney, she called for higher bail in gun cases, and the city court system obliged her. A spokesperson for Harris told CNN in an email, 15 years ago, as gun homicides were reaching record proportions in San Francisco, Kamala Harris took action to ensure illegal guns or gun crimes were prosecuted, and those arrested for perpetrating these crimes were not able to easily endanger city residents. I personally have no problem with Harris on this issue, but then again, I'm not a progressive Democrat.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Senator Harris.
This was pretty much the most talked about moment of the debate. And while Gabbard got high marks for the exchange, unless she can get her poll numbers up, this was likely the last time you will see her in the Democratic debates. But don't be surprised if she's chosen for Biden's pick for vice president. As for Harris, if she can't defend her record on a debate stage against a 4-term congresswoman, then how do you think that she'll do against President Trump? Luckily for Harris, that's something that she'll never have to worry about. Thanks for watching, sharing, and hitting that like button. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Check out the links in the description and check out these videos that you may have missed. A special thanks to all of my PayPal and Patreon supporters, as well as all of my channel members. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope to see you all next time.